knife video for you. Now, this is not going to be my full review of this knife. This is going to be a discussion and a comparison between this knife and some of the other things that are out there. And this should be really interesting. And I've gotten a lot of questions about this exact question. So, wow, this exact discussion. So let's take a quick look at this. Here we have the Spyderco Drunken. It is a beautiful, beautiful knife, really well designed, nicely finished blade there, beautiful attention to detail here, especially that really nice milling pattern is just fantastic. So there's a lot to like about this knife, but the price point probably isn't one of those things. Let me say, guys, that the title for this video came from a fire call we had recently where this guy sat in a fairly low quality Chinese restaurant and drank himself into absolute oblivion, and then went out on the sidewalk, fell down, and refused to get up. Okay, so when we showed up on the scene, the paramedics were already there. They were trying to talk him into taking an ambulance ride over to the hospital. And he was very compliant with them. He was pretty polite. But then as soon as they said, okay, let's get up and get in the ambulance, he would immediately turn belligerent and just cross his arms over his chest and lay there on the ground, refusing to move. When one of us approached, they said, look, we can't get him in the ambulance. You guys want to try? So firefighter walked up and said, hey, this is who I am. Can I give you a hand up? Maybe we can get you over to the hospital and hopefully get you feeling a little better. And the guy just immediately started to swear at him, get away from me, I hate you, and on and on. And to the point that even when he backed off, he said, okay, look, relax. And as he backed off and the paramedics walked over, the guy still took time to tell the paramedics, you guys are all right, but that guy, that's where the title of this video comes from. And so we've got this Drunken here, and the question is, does this stand up to the other knives that it's now competing with, right? This is a price point that puts you into some really deep waters. And so that's the discussion we're going to have. I'm going to grab a couple of other knives as our primary comparisons here. One is going to be the XM18, and the other, perhaps more comparable, is going to be the Inkosi. Now, listen, guys, if you are saying to me, Kevin, really, you should bring in a small Sebenza or a 3-inch Hinderer, I wouldn't argue with that. Although I feel like the size is closer to these, just not the philosophy of use. So this is definitely more of a gentleman's carry, more of an EDC style knife, more so than these two, which are a little harder use. All right, but I think we can still answer some of the important questions that we want to answer pertaining to does the value here make sense? Does it make sense to spend $400 on this when you could spend it on one of these two? Okay, so that's where we're going with this. Let's go ahead and kind of work our way through a bit of an initial comparison. Then we'll also take these apart and take a look at the internals and see how that measures up. Okay, so let's begin by asking the question, what is it you're looking for when you spend that amount of money on a knife? When you're spending, between $400 and $500, what is it? Why are you spending that money? What are you expecting to get for that price point? All right, so when we think about the amount of money we're spending here, I've thought about different ways to say this, but the one thing that I'm looking for, if I spend that kind of money, I'm looking for perfection. In fact, anything beyond, I don't know, any knife at all that I use and carry cannot have any blade play whatsoever. So that's a given from the start. Something like a slightly uneven grind, or centering that's a little off. Under $150, I'll probably live with something like that. Over $150, even that stuff has to be perfect. Like every detail really needs to be right when you get to the kind of money that you're asking for these. And I will say, there is a significant difference here. So these two knives, if you go and watch the shop tours from these factories, and you'll find they're very small factories. These knives, yes, they're production knives, but the people putting these together, are almost craftsmen more so than just assembly line workers. All right, and that's one of the things that represents a difference here. These are made in Taiwan. They're made in Spyderco's Taichung factory, and yes, they're very well made, no question. But are you getting the same attention to detail as you're getting with these guys? Are you getting the same just reliability that you're getting with these guys? that some of that stuff begins to be questionable. And so that's where, there's some serious questions that I think need to be asked. Now, listen, there's no question that the milling they're doing here and the milling that's internal and the blade steel they're using, all of that stuff costs money. It absolutely does, okay? And I'm not arguing that for a second. It does make a knife more expensive when you start to say, hey, let's use S90V for the steel. Okay, let's mill out the tie side to an extreme level. Let's put a nested stainless steel liner here. That stuff I know costs money. I know adds extra steps to what we're getting. All right. The other thing we want usually for that kind of money is a little extra pizzazz. We want something that, maybe not everyone has. We want something that's going to stand out from the crowd a little bit. And certainly, I think because of how iconic they are, certainly the Chris Reeve knives are going to do that. The Hinderers, again, yeah, there's something a little different here. And I've had people, when I've been carrying a Hinderer, people say, "Whoa, now that's a serious knife." They recognize, even non-knife people, that there's something more substantial going on here than the average knife that you're going to be carrying. And does that hold true for this guy? I think it does. Okay, and I think the difference is, I would say it's maybe a little more nuanced. All right, there are interesting designs available from Spyderco and from other companies that are more budget friendly. Okay, there are. What am I trying to say here? Sorry, guys, I'm tripping over my own words. But it does become a difficult question. Okay, these two, without hesitation, I would say the value is absolutely there. I'm not as confident about this. I'm really not. Longevity, I do think you're going to get a long life out of this knife, given the materials, given the grind on this steel, given the way everything is put together. Is it going to give you the longevity of an Inkosi? That's a tougher question to ask. Very few things are built to last the way that Chris Reeve knives are built to last. All right. Hinderer, I mean, Hinderer, again, it's heavy duty. Everything is oversized. Everything is very, very solid. And certainly, again, they're built to be extremely long lived. Let's take a look over here. Here we've got a backspacer. We've got a very substantial stop pin. There we go. We've got lockup that is around 50%. It looks later than that, but if you actually open the knife, there you go. You can kind of look on the back. So you can see that well, can't see it very well, but you can see it is about 50% lockup. You can see where the wear is kind of taking place there. Okay, so it's not that the knife is overly broken in. The lock bar tension is quite stiff, and I think they're borrowing that from Chris Reeve. Often people have commented on the fact that Chris Reeve knives tend to have a little more positive lock bar tension than other options, and I definitely like that. It certainly inspires some confidence. And then of course we've got this clip. Now the clip placement is a little unfortunate. I think had they just spun it a little bit so at least part of it was landing on the frame, they would have gotten better performance out of this. But we do know, by the way, that this is easily fixable. All right, Nick Shabazz has well documented the fact that just with a little bit of bending here, just a bit of a bend up and a bit of a bend down, that kind of fixes the issue with this clip. And so I'm not going to spend too much time detracting points for that particular, example. Now, the other consideration here that of course we have to make, one more before we get to that, warranty. All right, both Hinderer and Chris Reeve have bulletproof warranties. They really do. And most of these higher end companies do. When they're specializing in something that is just about paying close attention, I'm going to bring in one other knife here. So companies like these, all right, their volume is lower. I'm not going to be able to fit them all in, but you're going to have to bear with me. Their volume is lower. All right, and their attention to detail is higher. And they've got a bunch of guys in their factory that do nothing but put together this model of knife all day. So when something comes in for warranty, they know this thing inside out and backwards. All they do all day is put these things together. And so when one comes in that isn't working right, they can take a look at it in 2 seconds, figure out what's wrong. The other thing is both of these companies, and I'm assuming Koenig as well, but both of these companies offer pretty reliable spa treatments. Hinder has a bit of a list of things that they don't do, but you pretty well can use these with confidence, knowing that if something does happen, right, send it back into the manufacturer and they're going to really do a great job of taking care of you. All right, now let me move these out of the way. We'll bring the Drunken back into the picture here. Spyderco warranty, is it bad? No, Spyderco has a good warranty, but it's different because they're dealing with thousands upon thousands of knives. You think about all the people, and that's why, by the way, Spyderco makes it so their knives are harder to get apart. Okay, you think about all the people that bought a Tenacious at Walmart, saw a YouTube video and decided to take this thing apart and now can't get it back together, right? There's hundreds, and no doubt Spyderco processes dozens and dozens and dozens of incoming warranty knives every single day. And because of that, there's going to be a longer turnaround time. They're just not going to be able to deal with the volume that they have coming in. And almost by numbers alone, that means they're going to have a harder time dealing with warranty issues here. I would like to think, okay, but I just don't know. And if someone does know, and perhaps you'd like to weigh in the comments, I would love to hear it. I would like to think that Spyderco would say, hey, if a Drunken comes in, if a Paisan comes in, even if a Subvert comes in, we're going to give it priority treatment because somebody dropped a huge amount of money on this knife and they're expecting part of that money is going toward a better warranty experience than somebody who spent 25 bucks on a Tenacious. Okay, I would like to think that, but I highly doubt that that's the case. All right, now let's move on to our next point, which I think is equally as important. Okay, there are tons of guys, and I'm absolutely one of them, who are huge Chris Reeve fans, and they love Chris Reeve knives. And if you say something bad about Chris Reeve knives on the forums, they're going to jump down your throat. Okay, there are tons of guys who are massive Hinderer fans, and again, I'm one of them. I love the XM18. That's why I bought another one. Okay. And so I'm a pretty devoted fanboy to these two companies. And guess what? I am unashamedly a bit of a Spyderco fanboy as well. That's why most of the Spydercos that come out, you're going to see them on the channel. I really enjoy Spyderco as a knife company. I think they do a fantastic job of offering tons of great everyday carry knife options. And I think this is a good everyday carry knife option. So that's the other consideration here. If you are just the biggest Spyderco fan who ever lived, you probably want to buy this. All right. One, you probably have 500 other Spydercos, so it doesn't matter. You're probably not going to put the same kind of use on this as you would something else. But I want to, I want to address this and say that's one of the reasons this is on my channel. I love Spyderco knives. I love the look of this knife. I love the design of this knife. Absolutely. But I have to say, if someone were to come to me and say, Kevin, I've got, 380 bucks. I found a used, right, in Cosi that I want to buy. I would say, buy it, right? I wouldn't even hesitate. And, and I'm kind of saying, this is the only time they're going to save up that kind of money for a knife. All right, so given the same exact situation, someone's like, I've been saving for 6 or 8 months. I've got 400 bucks. I want to buy something cool. Kevin, should I buy a Spyderco Drunken? That's a much harder recommend. All right, now we have to have a much longer conversation. Okay, we really do. And maybe the answer is still yes. Okay, if they say to me, Dmitry Sinkovich is my favorite designer and Spyderco is my favorite knife company, and I've wanted something high end for a long, long time, and I've been saving, then yes. Okay. But if they just say, Kevin, I want to buy one really, really good high-end knife. I've been saving up for it, and I'm looking at a Sebenza 21 and a Drunken and who knows what else. That's a different question, and it's very hard to say then, yeah, you're going to be just as happy with the Drunken as you would be with the, I know this is not a Savenza, but as you would be with the 21 or even the Inkosi. Okay. All right, that's a very, very difficult thing to talk about. Now, let me say this one other thing here. I'm going to switch these around for a second. If you're if you're a big XM18 fan, maybe you're not even buying a Drunken because it's not the same knife. They're not geared to the same, they're not trying to achieve the same type of results. Okay, so those are all the considerations that I have and that come to mind as I'm talking about this. There's one other knife that I want to throw in here that um, I think is worth considering. This is way less than $400, all right, especially if you buy one on the secondary market. I've seen these, you can probably pick one up for about 250 bucks, between 250 and 300 for sure. And this is a huge win. It's fantastic, right? And I would recommend it without hesitation. These on the secondary are a little tougher to come by, and they hold their value well because I think people realize, Spyderco doesn't do a lot of knives like this, and for those big Spyderco fans out there, this is like a must buy. And anyway, so they're going to hold their value perhaps a little better, but find one of these on the secondary, and you're going to be pretty impressed. Okay, now. Let's take a pause here, okay? I want to take this knife apart. I want to let you guys take a look at the internals, and I want to take these two knives apart kind of side by side and carry on this discussion with, being able to look inside of these guys and talk a little bit about how they're actually put together. So let's come back. We'll take a few minutes to look at these internally, and then we'll draw some conclusions. Okay, guys, so now we've got this taken apart. Let's carry on and take a little bit of a look at how all of this stuff is put together. And there'll be a couple things that I want to point out here. First of all, I'm going to try to hold this together. There is the Drunken. I want you to notice how heavily milled that titanium is. I also want you to notice how substantial that stop pin is. I really, really like to see that. And that does, to me, indicate some pretty solid thinking and the idea that this is going to be a pretty heavy-duty knife. We've got, focus, got a nice phosphor bronze washer there. There we go. And you can see it's sort of self-polished a little bit. I like to keep those oriented the same way. So when I take a knife apart, I'm going to notice which side goes toward the blade, which side goes toward the handle. Here is the blade itself. You can take a good look at the way that lock bar is done. You can see it's basically flat, and there's just a teeny bit of a ridge on the far side there. Let's see. There we go. S90V, of course, very, very hard steel. And here's one of the reasons it might be worthwhile taking your stuff apart. See that little piece of gunk on that washer? So I would want to clean that off. There's a look at the rest. So again, I will put that back in the same way that it was when I took it off. There you go. You can take a look at the scale. Where is the stainless steel insert? So this guy sits in here like that. All right, a couple of nice points here. I love it when they use these sleeves to hold things together. This is the way a knife should go together. And so there's a lot of things on the Drunken that are done properly that inspire a lot of confidence in me. Let's take a quick look, though, at the pivot screw from the Chris Reeve. Look at the size of that thing. And you can see down here, hold on, let's pick this up. Okay, look at how substantial that is. Again, look at the stop pin and how substantial that is. Nicely done with the locating standoff here. Okay, hinderers have done the same thing. So with the hinderer, we've got these standoffs. These are the bronze. And this sleeve, of course, is going to slide through the titanium, through that standoff and into the other side. so that it can all come together. Give you a quick look at the scale as well as the liner there. Okay, so we're just kind of seeing how these are put together. Now, I will say this, guys, along these lines. One of the things I love about Hinders and Chris Reeve knives is they are meant to be taken apart. They come apart very, very easily, and it's just as simple as can be. Like you never, at least I have never had a problem disassembling any Chris Reeve or Hinderer knife. Spyderco, yeah, might have to be a little bit more careful. The Drunken here is pretty straightforward. You can see that there's nothing crazy going on here. I do like to see, so here is, notice that D-shaped pivot. I like to see that. The Chris Reeve is missing that. Now, the way Chris Reeve deals with it is they specifically send you two tools, two little Allen keys there so that you can put one in each side when you're opening that guy up. The Hinderer is a little more challenging, but I've got this little spanner bit here that does the trick just fine. It's not exactly right, but this is basically just wide enough to reach over the screw, the end of the screw and catch both sides of, let's see if I can find it for you. Oh, right here. Yeah, the whole thing came apart on me. That's all right. So here is the sleeve that goes through the pivot on the Hinderer. Again, look at the size of it. Look how substantial it is. But that that spanner, I'll just show you one more time, just drops right in there like that and misses the screw head. Okay, and it's just wide enough. This is not exactly right, but it's close enough that it does the trick. Now, I will, by the way, say if you're looking at the Saran wrap, wondering when I'm taking apart a nicer knife, or especially with the ano on the Drunken or the bronze stuff for the Hinderer, I'm going to wrap all of my tools in Saran wrap as I use it, so I don't mark up or scratch up those finishes. All right, so that's a little trick for you if you have some higher end stuff and you're afraid to take it apart. There you go. Now you've made it a little bit safer. There are a lot of different methods that people use to achieve the same goal, but that's just the one that I like to use. So now we've taken a look at all of these pieces taken apart, and really it's not that different. And there's not a whole lot going on that's troublesome to me with the Drunken versus the other two knives. Now I do think you can see that the pivot screw on both the Hinderer and the Chris Reeve are a little more substantial. Certainly the stop pin on the Inkosi is more substantial than either one of the other two, although both of them, by the way, we didn't look at the stop pin very much on the Hinderer, but all of them are very substantial. And so in terms of construction, I don't think we can have any real complaints about these knives. So now that we've had a quick look at the internals on these, I think that's an important thing to do. I wanted to demonstrate that, in fact, the Drunken is pretty nicely done when it comes to this. There'll be some choices that maybe we would make differently, but I think overall, these are all pretty confidence-inspiring knives. Let me pop these guys back together and we'll make a final conclusion. I know we're already 23 minutes in, but I thought this was an important thing to throw in here so that you guys could at least get a look at how these compare internally. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, guys, so now we've taken a look at all of these. We've had them opened up. We've considered all of the internals, and I think one of the things we've noticed is all of these are pretty simply put together. They tend to be pretty well put together. And in addition to being fairly well put together, we could perhaps add that these two knives are definitely more heavy duty than the Drunken is going to be. Now, that's part of the design choices that were being made. So it's not really fair to take as many, to criticize the Drunken overly for being not as heavily built as an XM18 or as an Inkosi. Again, we could compare this probably a little more reliably to a 21, but I think we have to admit that there are some pretty impressive things going on here. And I would add this, that while The attention to detail is not going to be there, and certainly there is a legitimate question about warranty. I do know, like, look, and I'm not suggesting anything here. Spyderco does have a good warranty, and they will fix things. And I've sent things to them for warranty work before, and been satisfied. But it's a pretty long turnaround time, and as I say, they're dealing with a lot more in terms of volume than likely a Chris Reeve is going to have to deal with, or Hinderer or Koenig or any number of other companies we could point to. Okay. So, is this knife built well? Yes, it's built very well. Is it going to be as classic and long-standing? I think that's a little bit more subjective, but this design is definitely a useful design that's certainly oriented around having a knife that you can use and rely on. It's got some slightly fancier stuff going on. Okay, we've got a large decorative pivot here. We've got very attractive carbon fiber with a really nice milling pattern, and so you're getting a couple little things there. And you remember, this is coming in at a little lower price point than the knives that we compared it to. So, can we justify the $400? Kind of, yes. You know, I'm not going to have a huge argument over that with Spyderco, and I'm certainly, I'm not going to offer the same criticism that I did on the Paisan, where I was really disappointed in the Paisan because I felt like there were some things that were big misses that just are inexcusable at that price point. This does not fall into that category. This is pretty well done. It's a very useful knife. It's extremely well built. It's classy. It's absolutely high end, and it is well put together. And I would expect a pretty long life out of this knife. All right. So that's my overall comparison. I don't think it will ever be as classic as this is going to be. I don't think it will even be sort of as classic or iconic as this is going to be. But that's, consider the fact that, for example, the Evo Typhoon was $400. Does it compare well to an Evo Typhoon? I would say yes, it does. Okay, so there you go. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this in the description down in the comments down below. And go check out White Mountain Knives. I'll put a link in the description box below. That's where I got this knife. And you can use my discount code SHARPSTUFF to save yourself 10%. Hopefully they have some in stock. I think what happens is the minute I say that in a video, they're immediately, if they had a bunch in stock before, they just magically disappear, even as soon as I say it before I've even posted this. So hopefully you can get that. If not, they have lots of other stuff over there you can check out as well. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.